Sarah had seen thousands of patients roll through those emergency room doors. Broken bones, heart attacks, trauma cases that would haunt her dreams. But nothing prepared her for the moment she recognized the blood-stained face on the stretcher. Her boyfriend. The man she'd been dating for 3 years. The person she thought she knew everything about. When his jacket was cut away and a small velvet box tumbled onto the sterile floor, Sarah's heart should have soared. Instead, what Michael confessed in that hospital room would shatter everything she believed about their relationship, about trust, and about the man she almost married.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing.
The fluorescent lights of St. Catherine's Hospital emergency room hummed their familiar tune, a soundtrack Sarah Chen had grown accustomed to over her 5 years as a trauma nurse. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Friday, and the ER buzzed with its usual chaos. An elderly woman with chest pains in Bay 3, a college kid with a possible broken arm in Bay 5. The smell of antiseptic and anxiety hung thick in the air. Sarah adjusted her ponytail and checked the vitals monitor for her current patient, making notes on her tablet with practiced efficiency. At 28, she had developed the kind of calm competence that came from seeing humanity at its most vulnerable. Nothing rattled her anymore. Or, so she thought. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text. From Michael. "Still on for tomorrow night? I have something special planned." She smiled, typing back quickly. "Wouldn't miss it. Love you." They'd been together for 3 years. Michael Carter, a software engineer with kind eyes and a terrible sense of humor that somehow made her laugh anyway. He was steady, reliable, the kind of man who brought her coffee exactly how she liked it and never complained when her shifts ran late. Her parents adored him. Her friends constantly asked when he was going to propose. Sarah had wondered the same thing, though she tried not to think about it too much. They were happy. That was enough. Wasn't it? "Sarah," the charge nurse's voice cut through her thoughts. "Incoming trauma, ETA 2 minutes. MVA, single vehicle, driver's side impact, male, approximately 30 years old, GCS fluctuating. Motor vehicle accident." Sarah's body switched into autopilot, her personal thoughts filing away into a mental drawer she'd open later. She joined Dr. Reynolds and 2 other nurses at the ambulance bay, the cold November air biting through her scrubs as they waited. The ambulance screamed into the bay, lights painting the night in urgent reds and blues. The paramedics rushed out, rattling off vitals and injuries as they wheeled the stretcher toward the doors. 30-year-old male, driver in single vehicle collision with a highway barrier, found unconscious at the scene, GCS was 6, now up to 10, BP 90/60, heart rate 120, suspected internal bleeding, multiple rib fractures, possible head trauma. Sarah moved to assist, her hands reaching for the stretcher rail. Then she saw his face. Time didn't stop. That's what people always said in moments like these, that time stopped. But Sarah experienced the opposite. Time accelerated and fractured, each second stretching and compressing simultaneously. She saw everything at once, the blood matting his dark hair, the oxygen mask fogging with his labored breaths, the way his left hand curled protectively against his ribs. Michael. His eyes were closed, his face pale beneath the grime and blood. A gash above his eyebrow leaked red down his temple. His shirt had been cut open by the paramedics, revealing a torso already bruising purple and black. "Sarah." Dr. Reynolds' voice seemed to come from very far away. "Sarah, do you know this patient?" She couldn't speak. Her training screamed at her to move, to help, to do something. But her body had turned to stone. The stretcher rolled past her and into the trauma bay, and she watched it go with the detached horror of a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "Sarah." Dr. Reynolds gripped her shoulder, his face swimming into focus. He was a man in his mid-40s, graying at the temples with eyes that had seen too much suffering to be surprised by anything. "Is this someone you know?" "My boyfriend," she whispered. The words felt foreign in her mouth. "That's Michael, my boyfriend." Dr. Reynolds' expression shifted from concern to professional determination. "All right, you know the protocol. You can't be on this case. Go to the break room and I'll send someone to update you." "No." The word came out stronger than she felt. "You're short-staffed tonight. I can help. I can—" "Sarah, you're too close to this. I'm the best trauma nurse you have on shift, and you need me. I won't touch him. I'll assist from the perimeter, but please, please don't make me sit in a break room while—" Dr. Reynolds studied her face for a long moment, weighing protocols against practicalities. The ER was indeed understaffed. Budget cuts had seen to that. Finally, he nodded. Perimeter only. You record, you fetch supplies, but you don't touch the patient. The second I think you can't handle it, you're out. Understood? Understood. The trauma bay was controlled chaos. Dr. Reynolds called orders while the other nurses worked with swift precision. IV lines were established, blood was drawn, the portable X-ray machine was wheeled in. Sarah stood at her station by the computer, documenting everything, her fingers flying across the keyboard, even as her eyes kept betraying her, looking at Michael's face. He was semi-conscious now, groaning in pain, his eyes fluttering but not quite opening. Every sound he made felt like a knife to her chest. Possible splenic laceration, Dr. Reynolds announced, palpating Michael's abdomen. We need a CT scan now. And someone call up to surgery, tell them we might need an OR. One of the nurses moved to cut away Michael's jacket, a brown leather bomber he'd bought last spring. Sarah had been with him when he bought it and had teased him about looking like a World War II pilot. The scissors sliced through the leather, and as the nurse pulled it away, something small and dark tumbled from the inside pocket. It hit the floor with a soft thud, sliding a few inches before coming to rest near Sarah's feet. A small velvet box. Navy blue, slightly worn at the corners, the kind of box that held jewelry. The kind of box that held rings. She stared at it. The room continued its frantic dance around her, but that small blue box commanded her entire attention. Her hand moved without conscious thought, bending down to pick it up. The velvet was soft against her fingers, warm from being next to Michael's body. She knew it was inside. Of course she knew. But she couldn't open it. Not here. Not now. Not while Michael lay broken on a table, his life hanging in some uncertain balance. Sarah, Dr. Reynolds' voice was gentle. Put that in a patient belongings bag. We'll deal with it later. She nodded, unable to speak, and mechanically placed the box in a clear plastic bag along with Michael's wallet and watch. Her hands shook as she sealed it, and she had to grip the edge of the counter to steady herself. The next 3 hours blurred together. The CT scan revealed a grade 2 splenic laceration, significant but not requiring immediate surgery. Michael's GCS improved to 14, his blood pressure stabilized. 3 fractured ribs, a mild concussion, various lacerations and contusions, but nothing that wouldn't heal. He'd been incredibly lucky. The doctors used that word a lot. Lucky. Sarah didn't feel lucky. She felt hollowed out, scraped raw like someone had reached inside her chest and rearranged everything. By 3 a.m., Michael had been moved to a private room in the trauma observation unit, stable enough not to need ICU, but serious enough to warrant close monitoring. Dr. Reynolds found Sarah at the nurse's station, still mechanically completing charts, though her shift had technically ended an hour ago. Go see him, Dr. Reynolds said quietly. He's been asking for you. Sarah's head snapped up. He's awake? In and out, confused, in pain, but awake. I gave him something for the pain so he might be a bit loopy, but he keeps saying your name. Dr. Reynolds paused, then placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sarah, I don't know what that box means, but whatever happens in that room, take care of yourself too, okay? She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and made her way to Michael's room on unsteady legs.
The velvet box in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Sarah had imagined this moment for years, finding out Michael wanted to marry her. But she never imagined it would happen like this, with him broken in a hospital bed, about to tell her something that would change everything. Michael's room was dimly lit, just the glow from the monitors and a small light above the bed. He lay with his eyes closed, an oxygen cannula in his nose, IV lines snaking from both arms. His face was clean now, the blood washed away, revealing the full extent to the bruising. A large bandage covered the gash on his forehead. Sarah stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Alive. He was alive. That was what mattered. She moved to the chair beside his bed and sat down carefully. Her hand found his, the one without the IV, and wrapped around it gently. His skin was cold. Michael, I whispered. I'm here. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then finding her face. Recognition flooded his features, followed immediately by something else. Fear? Sarah. His voice was hoarse, damage from the intubation tube the paramedics had briefly used. You're here, at the hospital. I work here, remember? I tried to smile, but it felt wrong on my face. You gave me quite a scare. He tried to sit up, winced, and fell back against the pillows. His eyes darted around the room, panic rising in his expression. My jacket! Where's my jacket? Your belongings are safe. Everything's safe. I squeezed his hand. Don't worry about that now. You need to rest. No, you don't understand. My jacket. There was something... He stopped abruptly, his eyes finding hers, and in them she saw something she'd never seen before. Desperation and guilt. I reached into my scrubs pocket and pulled out the velvet box. I held it up, not opening it, just showing it to him. Is this what you're looking for? Michael stared at the box like it was a live grenade. His hand, the one she wasn't holding, reached out trembling. I placed the box in his palm and watched as his fingers closed around it. Sarah, His voice cracked. This isn't how this was supposed to happen. It's okay, I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was hammering. Michael, what happened tonight? The police report said you hit a barrier on Highway 52. There were no other cars involved, no evidence of swerving to avoid anything. What happened? He closed his eyes and a tear slid down his bruised cheek. I need to tell you something. Before anything else happens, you need to know the truth. My stomach clenched. What truth? I was coming to see you tonight. I had it all planned out. Your favorite restaurant, roses, the whole thing. I was going to propose. He opened his hand, looking at the ring. I bought this ring 3 months ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the perfect moment. 3 months. He'd been planning this for 3 months, and she had no idea. Sarah felt a flutter of something. Joy? Anticipation? But it was immediately drowned by the dread in Michael's eyes. But, she prompted gently, but I've been lying to you, Sarah, about everything, about who I am, about what's been happening. He took a shuddering breath, wincing from his broken ribs. 6 months ago, I started having panic attacks, bad ones. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think, felt like I was dying. I went to a doctor, got diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder and clinical depression. Sarah's breath caught. 6 months! He'd been suffering for 6 months and never told her. I started therapy, Michael continued, his words coming faster now, like he needed to get them out before he lost his courage, and medication, but it wasn't enough. The attacks kept coming. Work became impossible. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. I'd have breakdowns in the bathroom at the office. 3 months ago, they let me go. You lost your job? Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. 3 months ago? But you've been going to work every day. You text me from the office. You complain about your boss. I've been lying. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and poisonous. Why? The question came out harsh. Why would you do that? Because I'm supposed to be the stable one, Michael's voice rose, then broke into a cough. When he recovered, his voice was quieter, defeated. You have this hard job, dealing with life and death every day. You come home exhausted, and I was supposed to be your rock, the person you could rely on. How could I tell you I was falling apart, that the man you thought you knew was actually a mess who couldn't even keep a job? So you just lied? Every single day? Sarah felt anger rising, hot and sharp in her chest. Michael, I'm a nurse. I deal with mental health crises all the time. Did you really think I'd judge you for struggling? No, not judge. Worse than that. He met my eyes, and the raw pain in them made my anger falter. I thought you'd stay with me out of pity, or obligation, or worse, that you'd try to fix me and I'd become your patient instead of my partner. I couldn't bear that. I stood up, pacing to the window. The hospital parking lot spread below, cars and ambulances and the occasional person walking through the cold night. Normal people, living normal lives, not trapped in rooms where their entire relationships are being rewritten.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
What does this have to do with the accident? She asked, not turning around. The silence behind her stretched so long, she finally turned to look at him. Michael was staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down his face. Michael, what happened on that highway?
I was driving to meet you, he said quietly, to propose, to start our life together, and all I could think was that I was about to trick you into marrying a lie. A broken, jobless, anxious mess who couldn't even be honest with the woman he loves. And I thought, his voice broke completely. I thought maybe everyone would be better off if I just wasn't around anymore. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. You tried to kill yourself? No, not exactly. I don't know. Michael's hands gripped the sheets, his knuckles white. I saw the barrier coming. I should have braked. I meant to brake, but there was this split second where I just didn't, where I thought maybe if I just didn't turn the wheel, didn't press the pedal, maybe everything would be simpler. And then at the last second I panicked and swerved, but it was too late. Sarah felt like the room was spinning. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. The man she loved, the man she'd planned a future with, had essentially just confessed to a suicide attempt, or something close to it, the gray area between accident and intention. You could have died, she said, her voice hollow. I know. You could have died, and I would have spent the rest of my life thinking it was just a random accident, never knowing you were struggling, never getting a chance to help. I know. And now you're lying in a hospital bed, broken and in pain, and you're telling me our entire relationship for the past 6 months has been a lie? Yes. Michael's voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. Sarah walked back to the bedside. She looked at the man she loved, or thought she loved, or maybe still loved, she didn't even know anymore. His face was a mess of bruises and regret. In his hand, he still clutched that velvet box. Open it, she said. What? The box. Open it. I want to see the ring you were going to use to propose to someone you've been lying to for 6 months. Michael's face crumpled, but he obeyed, his shaking hands fumbling with the small box until it clicked open. Inside was a simple platinum band with a small round diamond, elegant, understated, exactly the kind of ring Sarah would have wanted if the circumstances had been completely different. It's beautiful, she said, and meant it. But I can't accept it, not like this. I know. Michael closed the box, fresh tears falling. I know. I've ruined everything. I understand if you want to leave. I deserve that. Sarah sat back down, her mind racing. Everything she thought she knew had been upended. But under the anger, under the betrayal, there was something else. A small voice reminding her why she'd become a nurse in the first place. Do you remember me telling you about my brother, Daniel? Michael looked confused by the change in subject, but nodded. He died when you were in college. You said it was what made you want to go into healthcare. He killed himself. Sarah hadn't said those words out loud in years. They still hurt. He was 23, brilliant, funny. Everyone loved him. And he was suffering, and none of us knew. He hid it perfectly. He smiled and joked and pretended everything was fine, right up until the day he wasn't fine anymore. He left a note. It said he didn't want to burden anyone with his problems. Michael's eyes widened. Sarah, I didn't know. I never told you how he died because it's still too painful. But I need you to understand something. She leaned forward, making sure he was looking at her. My brother's death taught me that people hide pain because they think they're protecting the people they love. But they're not. They're just making sure those people can never help, never understand, never get a chance to choose to stand by them. I didn't want you to have to choose, Michael whispered, but that's not your decision to make. Sarah's voice rose, all the emotion of the night finally breaking through. You don't get to decide what I can or can't handle. You don't get to lie to protect me from reality. That's not love, Michael. That's control. That's making yourself feel better by hiding the truth. He flinched as if she'd struck him. You're right. God, you're right. I'm sorry. They sat in silence, the only sounds the steady beep of monitors and the distant activity of the hospital. Sarah's mind was spinning, trying to process everything, trying to figure out what she felt beneath the shock and anger. Finally, she spoke. I need you to answer me honestly. For the first time in 6 months, I need you to tell me the complete truth. Can you do that? Yes, anything. Do you love me? More than anything in the world. Do you want to marry me? Yes, but I understand if that's not possible anymore. Are you actively suicidal right now? Michael paused, really thinking about it. No, the accident scared me. The moment I actually started to crash, all I wanted was to live, to see you again, to make things right. I don't want to die. I want to get better. Sarah took a deep breath. This was it, the moment where she decided everything. Here's what's going to happen, she said, her voice steady. You're going to spend the night here, and tomorrow the hospital psychiatrist is going to evaluate you. You're going to be completely honest with them just like you were with me tonight. You're going to accept whatever treatment they recommend, whether that's inpatient care, intensive outpatient, medication adjustment, whatever it takes. Michael nodded, not daring to hope. And then, Sarah continued, we're going to start over. Not from the beginning, but from now, from this moment of truth. You're going to attend therapy regularly. You're going to be honest with me about how you're feeling, even when it's hard, even when you think you're burdening me, and I'm going to do the same. You're not leaving? Michael's voice broke with disbelief. I'm furious with you, Sarah said honestly, and hurt, and it's going to take time for me to trust you again. But leaving someone when they're struggling with mental illness, that's not who I am. That's not what love is. But the lying was wrong, absolutely wrong, and you're going to have to work to earn back my trust. But I also understand why you did it, even if I don't agree with it. Mental illness makes people do things that don't make sense to anyone else. I've seen it 1,000 times at work. I just never expected to see it in my own life. Sarah reached out and took the ring box from Michael's hand. She looked at it for a long moment, then placed it on the bedside table, deliberately not putting it back in his hand or on her finger. This ring is going to stay here. It's not a yes, but it's not a no either. It's a when you're better, when we've rebuilt what you broke, when I can trust that you'll be honest with me even when it's hard, we'll talk about it again. Michael reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. I will get better. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm going to hold you to that. Sarah squeezed his hand. But Michael, I need you to understand something. If you ever lie to me like this again, if you ever hide something this important, we're done. Not because I don't care, but because I can't build a life with someone I can't trust. Do you understand? I understand. Complete honesty, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Sarah echoed. She stayed there holding his hand as the sky outside began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. There were still so many things to figure out, so many conversations to have, but for now, in this moment, it was enough to sit together in the truth. Messy, painful, complicated truth, but truth nonetheless. Michael's eyes began to close, the pain medication finally pulling him towards sleep. Just before he drifted off, he murmured, I don't deserve you. Sarah thought about that, thought about her brother who had hidden his pain until it killed him, thought about all the patients she'd seen over the years who had suffered in silence, thought about Michael, broken and flawed and human, just like everyone else. It's not about deserving, she said softly, though she didn't know if he could still hear her. It's about choosing, and I choose to stay. For now, I choose to stay. The sun rose over St. Catherine's Hospital, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. A new day was beginning, and with it, Sarah realized, came the difficult work of rebuilding something that had been broken. Not the fairy tale ending she might have once imagined, but something real, something true.
Sarah thought the confession was the hardest part. She was wrong. Over the next 48 hours, as Michael underwent psychiatric evaluation and Sarah tried to maintain her normal life, a series of revelations would surface that made her question everything she thought she knew about the man she loved. Sarah's shift didn't officially start until 3 p.m. the next day, but she found herself back at the hospital by noon, unable to stay away. She'd gone home, showered, tried to eat something, but every bite tasted like cardboard. Her apartment felt strange and empty, full of reminders of Michael. His favorite coffee mug in the dish rack,
his toothbrush next to hers in the bathroom. The book he'd been reading. Was he really reading it? Or was that a lie too? She hated that she was now questioning everything. Dr. Lisa Ramirez, the hospital psychiatrist, found Sarah in the cafeteria, staring at an untouched sandwich. "Rough night?" Dr. Ramirez said, sitting down without invitation. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes behind rectangular glasses. Sarah had worked with her on several cases before and respected her judgment. "That's an understatement," Sarah replied. "I evaluated Michael this morning. He was very forthcoming about his mental health struggles, the job loss, the lying, and the circumstances of the accident." Dr. Ramirez paused. "He also signed a release allowing me to discuss his case with you given the unique situation." Sarah looked up. "What's the diagnosis?" "Major depressive disorder, severe. Generalized anxiety disorder. Both have been inadequately treated. The medications he was on were at too low a dose, and he wasn't being fully honest with his therapist, which limited the effectiveness of that treatment." Dr. Ramirez folded her hands on the table. "What happened last night wasn't a clear-cut suicide attempt, but it was definitely suicidal ideation manifesting in a dangerous moment of impaired judgment." "What happens now?" "I'm recommending a 2-week intensive outpatient program. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, focused on crisis intervention, medication management, and developing coping strategies. After that, continued individual therapy and support groups. He's agreed to all of it." Sarah felt a small knot in her chest loosen. "That's good. That's a start." "Sarah," Dr. Ramirez's voice became gentler, "I want to talk about you for a moment. This is traumatic for you too. Finding out someone you love has been lying to you, has been in crisis without your knowledge. That's a lot to process. Have you considered talking to someone?" "I'm fine." "You're a trauma nurse who just discovered her boyfriend had what amounts to a passive suicide attempt. You're not fine." Dr. Ramirez pulled out a business card. "This is a colleague of mine who specializes in helping partners and families of people with mental illness. Just think about it." Sarah took the card, knowing she'd probably never call, but appreciating the gesture nonetheless. She visited Michael later that afternoon before her shift started. He was awake, sitting up in bed, looking marginally better than he had the night before. The bruising had deepened to purple and black, but his eyes were clearer. "Hey," he said, managing a small smile. "You came back." "I said I would." Sarah sat in the visitor's chair, maintaining a little distance. She was still processing, still figuring out how to be with him now that everything had changed. "Dr. Ramirez told me about the treatment plan. I'm glad you agreed to it." "It's the least I can do. Sarah, I've been thinking about what you said, about being honest even when it's hard. I want to tell you everything, no more secrets, about the job loss, the financial situation, all of it." For the next hour, Michael talked, and Sarah listened. The picture that emerged was worse than she had imagined. He'd been fired, not laid off. His anxiety attacks had become so severe he'd missed deadlines, snapped at colleagues, essentially stopped functioning effectively. His manager had tried to work with him, but Michael had been too ashamed to explain what was happening, so from the outside, it just looked like he'd stopped caring about his work. His savings weren't almost gone, they were gone. He'd been putting expenses on credit cards for the past month, sinking into debt he had no way to pay off. The rent on his apartment was due in a week, and he didn't have it. He'd been applying for jobs, dozens of them, but kept bombing the interviews because his anxiety made him come across as nervous and unprepared. The rejections only deepened his depression, creating a vicious cycle. And there was more. His therapist, Dr. Morrison, had suggested at their last session, the session 2 weeks ago that Michael had skipped, that Michael might benefit from inpatient treatment. Michael had blown off the suggestion, insisting he was fine and hadn't gone back. By the time Michael finished talking, Sarah felt exhausted. This was so much bigger than she had realized. It wasn't just about the lies. It was about a complete unraveling of the life Michael had been living, and she'd been completely oblivious to all of it. "Why didn't you ask me for help? With the rent, with the job search, with any of it? We've been together 3 years. You could have told me. Pride, I guess. Shame. I wanted to be the man you fell in love with, not this broken version. He looked down at his hands. I kept thinking I could fix it myself, that if I just tried harder, pushed through, everything would go back to normal. But it just kept getting worse. Sarah stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, life went on. People visiting loved ones, doctors and nurses moving between buildings. The world continued turning, indifferent to personal crises. I need you to understand something, she said, still looking out the window. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. You fell in love with me knowing I'm a nurse, that I work crazy hours, that I come home exhausted and sometimes grumpy. You love me anyway, right? With all my flaws and bad days? Of course. Then why did you think I couldn't do the same for you? You decided I couldn't handle knowing you were struggling. You made that choice for both of us. And that's what hurts the most, Michael. Not the depression or the anxiety. I can handle that. It's that you didn't trust me enough to let me in. His face crumpled. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from the charge nurse. They need her on the floor. There had been a multi-vehicle accident on the interstate. Duty called. I have to go. My shift started 10 minutes ago. Will you come back tonight? Sarah paused at the door. Would she? Should she? She was so angry, so hurt, so confused. But she was also worried about him, still cared about him, despite everything. I'll try. It was the most honest answer she could give. Her shift was brutal. 3 critical patients from the highway accident, 2 more chest pain cases, a suspected stroke, and a child with a severe allergic reaction. Sarah moved through it all with mechanical precision, her body doing what it had been trained to do, while her mind churned over everything Michael had told her. During her break at 8 p.m., she sat in the staff lounge and finally looked at her phone. She had 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. The first few were from Michael's mother. Sarah, we just heard about the accident. Is Michael okay? Why aren't you answering? Please call us.
The hospital won't tell us anything because Michael put you as his primary contact. Please call. Sarah's stomach sank. She'd been so caught up in her own crisis that she hadn't even thought about Michael's parents. They lived 3 hours away in Pennsylvania, but were close to their only son. They'd been at every holiday, every birthday celebration. They'd welcomed Sarah into their family with open arms. She called Michael's mother, Karen, back. Sarah, oh thank God. We've been so worried. How is he? What happened? The hospital said he was in an accident but wouldn't give us details. He's stable, Sarah said carefully. Broken ribs, concussion, some internal bruising, but he's going to be okay. They're keeping him for observation. We're coming down. We can be there by midnight if we leave now. Karen, wait. Sarah closed her eyes. This conversation was going to be hard. There are some things you should know before you come about what's been going on with Michael. There was a pause. What do you mean? Sarah made a decision. If Michael was going to be honest, if they were going to rebuild on a foundation of truth, that had to extend to his parents too. Besides, they deserved to know their son was struggling. Michael has been dealing with severe depression and anxiety. He lost his job 3 months ago and has been hiding it. He's starting an intensive treatment program, and I think he could really use your support right now. But there are some difficult conversations coming. The silence, on the other hand, stretched so long, Sarah wondered if the call had dropped. He lost his job? Karen's voice was small. 3 months ago? But he was just telling us last week about a project he was working on. He's been lying to everyone. To me, to you, to his therapist. The depression made him feel like he had to hide what was happening. I could hear Karen crying quietly. I'm sorry to tell you this over the phone. I know it's a lot. Is that why he crashed? Was he... Karen couldn't finish the sentence.
The circumstances are complicated. I think you should talk to him directly about it. But he's getting help now. That's what matters." After she hung up with Karen, Sarah leaned back against the wall and felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. This wasn't just about her and Michael anymore. It was about his family, their future, a web of relationships that had been built on what now felt like sand. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. By the time she clocked out at 11 p.m., Sarah was physically and emotionally exhausted. She should go home. She should sleep. Instead, she found herself walking to Michael's room. He was awake, staring at the ceiling. The velvet ring box sat on the bedside table where she'd left it, a small symbol of all their unresolved questions. "Your parents are coming," Sarah said from the doorway. "They'll be here soon." Michael's head whipped toward her. "You called them?" "They called me 17 times. I couldn't just ignore them, Michael." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. About the depression, the job, the lying. Not the specific details of the accident. I thought you should be the one to talk to them about that." Sarah crossed her arms. "They deserve to know, just like I deserve to know." Michael looked stricken. "God, my mom must be devastated." "She's worried. They both are. But they love you, and they want to help. That's what people who love you do, Michael. They help. They don't need you to be perfect." Before Michael could respond, there was a commotion in the hallway. Karen and James Carter burst into the room, Karen rushing to Michael's bedside with a cry of distress. "Oh, baby, look at you. Oh my God, look at your face." She was crying, touching his bruises gently like she could heal them with her hands. James stood at the foot of the bed, his face grave, taking in the monitors and IV lines. "I'm okay, Mom. I'm going to be okay." Michael's voice broke, and suddenly he was crying too, and Karen was holding him as carefully as she could, and James had his hand on his son's shoulder. Sarah slipped out of the room quietly, giving them privacy. She found herself in the hospital chapel, a small room on the second floor that she'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. It was empty, lit by a few electric candles, with simple wooden pews facing a non-denominational altar. She sat down in the back row and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The fear when she'd first seen Michael on that stretcher, the shock of the ring, the betrayal of the lies, the sadness of realizing how much he'd been suffering alone, the anger at being kept in the dark, the love that stubbornly remained despite everything. It was too much. It was all too much. Sarah put her head in her hands and cried. Just when Sarah thought she could begin to process everything, a phone call 3 days later would reveal something that made all of Michael's confessions seem like just the tip of an iceberg. The truth, it turned out, was even more complicated than anyone had imagined. 3 days later, Michael was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions to begin his intensive outpatient program the following Monday. His parents had decided to stay in town for a few weeks, taking over the guest room in Michael's apartment to help him through the initial treatment phase. Sarah had kept her distance during those 3 days, working her regular shifts and visiting Michael only briefly. She needed space to think, to feel, to figure out what she wanted. Michael understood, or at least he said he did. On Thursday afternoon, Sarah's day off, she was at home trying to grade some coursework for a nursing continuing education class she taught on weekends when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Hi, is this Sarah Chen?" A woman's voice, professional but tentative. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Amanda Morrison. I'm Michael Carter's therapist. I hope you don't mind me calling. Michael signed a release form allowing me to speak with you, and I thought we should talk." Sarah sat up straighter. Dr. Morrison, the therapist Michael had been seeing, or not seeing, as it turned out. "Of course, I've actually been meaning to reach out to you. Michael mentioned you'd suggested inpatient treatment before the accident." "Yes, and I deeply regret that he didn't follow through with that recommendation." Dr. Morrison paused. "Sarah, Michael has been my patient for 6 months, and I have to tell you, there are some things that have been troubling me about his case. Things I couldn't fully address because he wasn't being completely honest with me, but that are becoming clearer now in light of recent events. Sarah's stomach tightened. What kind of things? I need to ask you something first, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Michael ever been violent? Aggressive? Has he ever done anything that made you feel unsafe? What? No, never. Michael is the gentlest person I know. Why would you ask that? Dr. Morrison let out a breath. That's what I thought, but I needed to confirm. Sarah, in our sessions, Michael talked extensively about his anxiety and depression, but there was always something off. He would describe scenarios that seemed disproportionate to his reactions. He talked about feeling persecuted at work, convinced his colleagues were conspiring against him. He mentioned feeling like people were watching him, judging him constantly. That sounds like anxiety, Sarah said. Social anxiety, paranoia related to depression. That's what I thought too, initially, but it persisted even as we worked on his anxiety. And then there were the inconsistencies in his stories. He'd tell me about conflicts at work, and when I'd ask follow-up questions the next week, the details would be completely different. I started to wonder if he was experiencing some kind of dissociative episodes, or if there was something else going on that he wasn't telling me. Sarah's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying that when I heard about the accident and the circumstances around it, something clicked. Sarah, I think Michael might have been having a psychotic break, or something close to it. The paranoia, the inconsistent narratives, the sudden decision to hide everything from everyone, these could all be signs of something more than just depression and anxiety. Psychotic break? Like schizophrenia? Possibly. Or a severe mood disorder with psychotic features, or even a trauma response we haven't uncovered yet. I can't diagnose without seeing him again and doing a more thorough evaluation, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The treatment plan Dr. Ramirez put together is good for depression and anxiety, but if there's an underlying psychotic disorder, he'll need additional intervention. Sarah felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet again. Has anyone told Michael this theory? I spoke with Dr. Ramirez this morning, and we're planning to have Michael come in for additional psychiatric testing next week. But Sarah, I wanted to call you because there's something else. Something I need your help with. What? In one of our last sessions, Michael mentioned you had a brother who died. He said it was a car accident. But his affect when he talked about it was strange, almost excited, which seemed inappropriate. And he kept saying that you understood loss in a way that would make him understand him. At the time, I thought it was just awkward phrasing, but now I'm wondering if there was something more to it. Sarah's blood ran cold. My brother didn't die in a car accident. He died by suicide. Did you ever tell Michael that? I told him last night in the hospital. It was the first time I had ever said it out loud to him. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sarah, I think you need to ask Michael how he really knew about your brother. After Dr. Morrison hung up, Sarah sat frozen on her couch, her mind racing. How had Michael known about Daniel? She'd always told people, including Michael, that it was a car accident. It was easier than explaining the suicide, easier than dealing with people's awkward sympathy and inevitable questions. But in the hospital, when she'd told Michael the truth, he hadn't seemed surprised. He'd been upset, emotional, but not shocked, not confused. She had been too caught up in the moment to notice, but now, thinking back, he already knew. Sarah grabbed her keys and drove to Michael's apartment. His parents' car was parked outside, but she didn't care. She needed answers. Karen answered the door, her face brightening when she saw Sarah. "Oh, Sarah, come in, come in. Michael has been hoping you'd visit. He's in the bedroom resting." Sarah walked through the apartment, Michael's apartment, that she'd been in hundreds of times, that now felt foreign and wrong, and knocked on the bedroom door.
"Come in," Michael called. He was sitting up in bed, looking better than he had in the hospital, but still bruised and broken. He smiled when he saw me, but the smile faded when he saw my expression. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I closed the door behind me and stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. "I got a call from Dr. Morrison today." Michael's face went pale. "Oh. She had some interesting theories about what's been going on with you. Possible psychotic features, dissociative episodes, things that go beyond depression and anxiety." Sarah kept her voice level. "But that's not why I'm here. I need you to answer a question, and I need you to be completely honest. How did you know about my brother?" "You told me he died. You said it was a car accident."
How did you know it was suicide? Michael opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes darted away from hers, to the window, to the floor, anywhere but her face. Michael, how did you know? He took a shaky breath. I looked him up online about a year ago. Sarah felt like she'd been punched. You what? I was curious about your family. You hardly ever talked about your brother, and when you did, something seemed off about the story, so I Googled him, found his obituary, found some news articles about his death. They mentioned suicide. The words came out in a rush. I'm sorry. I should have told you I knew. I should have said something, but you had been lying about it for so long, and I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. So you just kept that information to yourself for a year? I was trying to be respectful of your privacy. Respectful? Sarah's voice rose. You researched my dead brother behind my back and then pretended not to know the truth when I finally opened up to you in the hospital? How is any of that respectful? I know it sounds bad. It sounds like psychotic, Michael. It sounds like something a stalker would do, not a boyfriend. Sarah was shouting now, months of stress and confusion and anger finally boiling over. What else have you been hiding? What else have you researched or lied about or twisted around? Nothing. I swear, nothing else. How am I supposed to believe you? Sarah laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You've lied about your job, your mental health, your finances, and now I find out you've been keeping tabs on my dead brother? Is anything about you real? Michael tried to get out of bed, winced, and fell back. Sarah, please, I know I've made mistakes. Mistakes? Michael, these aren't mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting to buy milk or missing an anniversary. This is systematic deception. She stopped, breathing hard, trying to organize her thoughts. Dr. Morrison thinks you might be experiencing psychosis, paranoid delusions, dissociative episodes, and honestly, after this conversation, I'm starting to think she might be right. I'm not crazy. Then what are you? Because the man I thought I knew wouldn't do any of this. The man I thought I knew was honest and kind and stable, but that man doesn't exist, does he? You created him. You made him up to be what you thought I wanted. Michael was crying now, silent tears streaming down his bruised face. I didn't make him up. That is who I am, or who I want to be. I've been so scared, Sarah, scared of losing you, scared of you seeing the real me and deciding I'm not worth it. So I tried to be perfect. And when I couldn't be perfect, I tried to hide the imperfect parts, but I'm still me. I still love you. That was never a lie. Sarah stared at him, this man she'd been with for 3 years, this man she'd almost married, and realized she didn't know him at all. Maybe she never had. I need to go, she said quietly. Sarah, please don't leave like this. Let's talk about this. We can work through it. Can we? Because every time I think I've heard the whole truth, there is something else. Another lie, another revelation, another thing you've been hiding. How many more secrets are there, Michael? How deep does this go? That's everything. I swear on my life, that's everything. Sarah walked to the door, then stopped with her hand on the knob. The ring you wanted to give me, did you buy it because you actually wanted to marry me, or because you thought proposing would lock me in, make it harder for me to leave when the truth came out? How can you even ask that? Because I don't know what's real anymore. Sarah opened the door. Get help, Michael. Real help. Figure out what's going on in your head. And maybe, someday,
If you can actually be honest, completely, totally honest, we can try again. But not now. I can't do this now. She left before he could respond, walking past Karen in the living room, ignoring the concerned questions. She made it to her car before the tears came, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. She'd thought the confession in the hospital was the worst of it. She thought she could handle the depression and anxiety, could work through the lies and rebuild trust. But this? Research into her dead brother? Secrets layered on secrets? Possible psychosis? This was too much. Sarah sat in her car outside Michael's apartment and called the number on the business card Dr. Ramirez had given her, the therapist who specialized in partners of people with mental illness. "Hello, this is Dr. Patricia Williams." "Hi," Sarah said, her voice thick with tears. "My name is Sarah Chen, and I think I need help."
The final revelation came not from Michael, but from an unexpected source, and it would force Sarah to confront not just Michael's truth, but her own. Dr. Patricia Williams' office was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and furniture that actually looked inviting, unlike the sterile institutional chairs Sarah was used to at the hospital. Sarah had been seeing her twice a week for 2 weeks now, trying to process the emotional whiplash of everything that had happened. She hadn't spoken to Michael in that time. He'd texted, called, even sent a letter through his mother, but Sarah had maintained her boundary. She needed space. She needed clarity. She needed to figure out who she was outside of this relationship that had consumed so much of her life. "You seem different today," Dr. Williams observed during their session on a Wednesday afternoon. "More settled. Have you been thinking about what we discussed last time?" Last time they'd talked about Sarah's tendency to take care of everyone else while ignoring her own needs, about how her brother's death had shaped her choice to become a nurse, not just to help people, but to save them in a way she hadn't been able to save Daniel, about how that savior complex might have attracted her to someone like Michael who needed saving. "I have," Sarah admitted, "and I've been thinking about something else too, about all the lies Michael told and how angry I am about them, but also about the lies I've been telling." "What lies?" "The car accident story about my brother. I've been telling that lie for 8 years, to friends, coworkers, my parents' friends, even to Michael. And I justified it by saying it was easier, that it was protecting Daniel's memory, that it wasn't anyone's business. But really, I was just ashamed. Ashamed that I didn't see the signs, ashamed that I couldn't save him, ashamed that mental illness and suicide were in my family." Dr. Williams nodded encouragingly. "And how does recognizing that make you feel?" "Hypocritical," Sarah said honestly. "I've been furious at Michael for hiding his mental health struggles and lying about them. But I did the exact same thing with Daniel's death. I hid the truth because I was ashamed and thought it would be easier to manage people's perceptions. How is that different from what Michael did?" "There are some differences. Your lie didn't affect your current functioning or put anyone at risk, but you're right that there's a parallel there. What do you think that means?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I think it means I need to forgive him. Not forget, not excuse what he did, but understand why he did it. Because I did the same thing, just about something different." After her therapy session, Sarah drove to St. Catherine's Hospital. Not to work, it was her day off, but to see Dr. Morrison, who had agreed to meet with her to discuss Michael's case. They sat in Dr. Morrison's small office, surrounded by psychology textbooks and motivational posters that probably were meant to be uplifting, but just felt sad to Sarah. "Thank you for meeting with me. I wanted to ask you about Michael's evaluation. His mom mentioned he did additional psychiatric testing last week." Dr. Morrison nodded. "Yes, he did. And I apologize for my phone call 2 weeks ago. I was concerned about some of Michael's presentations, but I think I may have alarmed you unnecessarily." Sarah sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "The additional testing didn't reveal any psychotic features. No schizophrenia, no dissociative disorder. What it did reveal was severe PTSD with an unusual origin." Dr. Morrison pulled out a file. "Sarah, did Michael ever tell you about his sister?" "Sister? Michael's an only child." "Actually, he had a younger sister, Emma. She died when Michael was 16 and she was 13. Leukemia. Michael was with her when she died." Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. He never
He never mentioned her, not once in 3 years. According to Michael, he's never told anyone about Emma since his family moved from Ohio to Pennsylvania shortly after her death. His parents wanted a fresh start, wanted to escape the memories. They essentially erased Emma from their family narrative. No pictures displayed, no mention of her to new friends or neighbors. Michael internalized the idea that grief and loss were things to be hidden, buried, never discussed. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Michael's obsessive research about Daniel, his panic about revealing his mental health struggles, his elaborate lies to maintain the appearance of a perfect life. He'd been doing what his family had taught him to do: hide the painful, broken parts. "That's why he looked up my brother," Sarah said quietly. "He knew I was lying about the car accident because he recognized the signs. He'd been living that same lie his whole life." Exactly. Michael's PTSD manifests as an intense fear of loss and abandonment, combined with a deeply ingrained belief that showing vulnerability will drive people away. His depression and anxiety spiraled when he lost his job because it confirmed his worst fear, that he was fundamentally flawed and unworthy of love. The accident. You said it was suicidal ideation. Was it really? Dr. Morrison considered the question carefully. "I think it was a moment of complete hopelessness, where death seemed easier than continuing to live with his fear and shame. But I don't think Michael actively wanted to die. I think he wanted the pain to stop, and in that split second, not swerving seemed like a way to make that happen." Sarah left Dr. Morrison's office with a strange sense of clarity. Michael wasn't a villain. He wasn't even just someone with depression and anxiety. He was a traumatized person who had learned at 16 years old that painful truths should be hidden, that grief was shameful, that showing weakness meant being abandoned. She drove to Michael's apartment. It was time to face this, whatever this ended up being. Karen answered the door again, her face cautious this time. "Sarah, Michael's been hoping you'd come by. He's been doing well in his program. Goes every day, hasn't missed a session." "That's good. Is he home?" "He's in the bedroom." Sarah touched her arm gently. "Whatever happens between you two, thank you for getting him help, for being there when he needed it most." Michael was sitting at his desk when Sarah knocked and entered. He looked better. The bruises had faded to yellow-green, and there was a clarity in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He stood when he saw her, uncertain. "Sarah, hi. I hoped, but I didn't want to assume." "Sit down, Michael. We need to talk." They sat facing each other, Sarah in the desk chair, Michael on the edge of the bed. The velvet ring box was nowhere to be seen. "Dr. Morrison told me about Emma." "She wasn't supposed to tell you that. She didn't betray your confidence. I asked to meet with her, and she thought I should know." Sarah leaned forward. "Michael, why didn't you tell me you had a sister? In 3 years, you never once mentioned her." "Because she's dead, and talking about her doesn't bring her back. It just makes the pain real again. My parents, after Emma died, they made it clear that we were moving on. New house, new town, new life. We didn't talk about her. We didn't cry about her. We just pretended she never existed. And I was 16. I didn't know any better. I thought that was what you were supposed to do with grief. Bury it. That's why you researched Daniel, because you recognize what I was doing."
Michael nodded miserably. "I saw the way you talked about him, or didn't talk about him. The vague details, the quick subject changes. I knew those moves because I'd perfected them myself. And when I found out the truth about how he died, I understood. You were ashamed, just like I was ashamed about Emma, about not being able to save her, about surviving when she didn't." Sarah felt tears prickling her eyes. "You should have told me. We could have helped each other." "I know that now. But I've spent 12 years hiding Emma's existence. The idea of deliberately bringing up painful memories, of making myself vulnerable like that, I didn't know how." Michael looked at his hands. "My therapist says I have PTSD. That watching Emma die and then having my parents essentially erase her from our lives traumatized me in ways I've never processed. That's why I developed such severe anxiety and depression.
That's why I couldn't handle losing my job. It triggered all my fears about being disposable, forgettable like Emma became. I'm sorry that happened to you, Sarah said, and meant it. But Michael, you can't use trauma as an excuse for lying, for manipulating, for hiding things that directly affected our relationship. I know, and I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to explain. Michael met her eyes. In therapy, we've been working on radical honesty, on saying the hard truths even when they're terrifying. So here's my truth. I love you. I want to marry you. But I'm also a mess. I have PTSD and depression and anxiety, and I'm going to be in treatment for a long time. I'm going to have bad days. I might always struggle with mental health in some way. And I can't promise I'll never mess up again because I'm human and humans mess up. But I can promise I'll be honest about it. I can promise I'll tell you when I'm struggling instead of hiding it. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment, the decision point. Stay or go. Forgive or walk away. I have a truth too. I became a nurse to save people because I couldn't save my brother. And I think part of me was attracted to you because you seem stable, like someone who would never put me through what Daniel put me through. But that was unfair. I was asking you to be perfect so I could feel safe. You weren't asking for perfection. I was, though. Not explicitly, but in the way I presented myself. Always competent, always together, always the one helping others. I never showed you my vulnerabilities because I thought I had to be the strong one, and that didn't leave room for you to be weak. Michael looked stunned. Sarah, you went through a trauma too. Your brother's death shaped me in ways I'm only starting to understand. And I think Dr. Williams is right. I think I need to work on myself just as much as you need to work on yourself. Sarah stood up, walked to the window. Michael's apartment overlooked a small park where children were playing, their laughter drifting up. I don't know if we can make this work. There's been so much damage, so many lies, so much hurt. I understand. Michael's voice was thick with unshed tears. If you want to end things, I understand. I don't want to end things, Sarah said, surprising herself as much as him. But I don't want to continue the way we were either. We need to start over. Actually start over, not just say we're starting over while carrying all the old baggage. She turned to face him. Here's what I propose. We both continue therapy. Individual therapy. Not couples therapy, not yet. We work on ourselves separately for a while. And we date. Actually date, like we're getting to know each other for the first time. No living together, no rushing into marriage, just spending time together. Being honest. Learning who we really are, not who we pretended to be. Like a do-over, Michael said slowly. Like a chance to build something real instead of something perfect. Sarah managed a small smile. And maybe, if we can do that, if we can be honest and vulnerable and real with each other, then someday we can talk about rings and marriage and forever. But not now. Now we need to heal. Michael stood up, moving carefully because of his still healing ribs. Can I hug you? Is that allowed in this new arrangement? Sarah considered, then nodded. Michael wrapped his arms around her gently, and she let herself lean into him. He smelled like the hospital soap and something uniquely him. Familiar, but also strange. Known, but also unknowable. I'm going to prove to you that I can be the man you deserve. The real me, not the fake perfect version. I'm going to be so honest it's uncomfortable sometimes. I'm going to tell you when I'm struggling, when I'm scared, when I'm not okay. And I'm going to support you doing the same thing. That's all I ask. Honesty, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the afternoon light. It wasn't the romantic reunion Sarah had once imagined, There was no dramatic declaration, no sweeping kiss, no ring sliding on her finger. But it was real. Messy and complicated and uncertain, but real. And maybe, Sarah thought, that was more valuable than any fairy tale.
Sarah sat in the hospital cafeteria on her lunch break, eating a sandwich and reviewing patient charts on her tablet. Her phone buzzed with a text. Michael, therapy was rough today. Talked about Emma's last days. I'm pretty emotional. Any chance you're free for dinner tonight? I could use a friend. A friend. They'd been dating but not together for 6 months now, and sometimes Michael still tested the waters, uncertain about what he was allowed to ask for. Sarah typed back, I get off at 7. Come over and I'll cook. We can talk about it if you want or just watch bad TV if you need distraction. Michael, thank you. Talking would be good. I'm trying to do the express feelings thing my therapist keeps pushing. Sarah, proud of you for doing the hard work. It was true. Michael had thrown himself into treatment with an intensity that surprised everyone. He attended every IOP session, saw his individual therapist twice a week, joined a men's support group for depression. He'd started medication that actually worked at an appropriate dose. He'd gotten a new job. Nothing glamorous, tech support for a small company, but it was stable, and he was honest with his boss about his mental health needs. He'd also, with Dr. Morrison's support, had some difficult conversations with his parents about Emma. They'd started family therapy together, beginning the long process of acknowledging the grief they'd buried for 12 years. Sarah had done her own work too. She'd continued seeing Dr. Williams, processing her guilt about Daniel and her tendency to caretake at the expense of her own needs. She'd started being more honest with her parents, her friends, even her coworkers about her struggles and vulnerabilities. And she'd told her own mother the truth about Daniel's death. That conversation had been brutal. Her mother had cried, had been angry that Sarah had lied for so long, had gone through her own crisis of grief and guilt. But they'd come out the other side closer, more honest with each other. Hey, stranger. A familiar voice pulled Sarah from her thoughts. Jenna, another ER nurse and Sarah's closest work friend, slid into the seat across from her. You coming to drinks after shift Friday? Maybe. Michael has his support group that night, so I'm free. How's that going, by the way? The whole dating your ex-boyfriend who's not technically your ex because you never officially broke up thing. Sarah laughed. It's weird, but good weird. We're actually getting to know each other, like really know each other. Did you know Michael played piano as a kid? For 6 years. I had no idea until last month. Wild. You were together 3 years and didn't know he played piano? We thought we knew everything about each other, but we really knew the surface stuff. Now we're digging deeper. She took a bite of her sandwich. We're taking things really slow. Some weeks we only see each other once. Sometimes we go 2 weeks without seeing each other at all if life gets busy. It's actually kind of nice not having all the pressure of a serious relationship. But you still love him, Jenna said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I admitted. I do. Maybe more than before, actually, because now I love the real him. Flaws and struggles and all. Her phone buzzed again. Michael. Also, totally unrelated to my emotional breakdown, but I'm finally going to see that movie you recommended. The one about the time travelers? Want to come? Sarah smiled, typing back. Thought you said time travel movies were illogical and annoying. Michael. They are, but you love them, so I'm trying to understand why. Radical honesty includes admitting when I'm willing to suffer through movies I hate for people I care about. Sarah. That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Michael. My therapist would be so proud. See you at 7:30. Sarah. See you then. She put her phone away and finished her lunch, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the naive hope of thinking everything would be perfect, but the realistic hope that came from choosing someone despite their imperfections and having them choose you back the same way. In her locker upstairs, tucked in the inside pocket of her work bag, was a small velvet box. Michael had given it to her 3 weeks ago, but not as a promise. I want you to hold on to this, not as a promise that we'll get engaged,
but as a reminder of where we've been and where we're going. Someday, when we're both ready, when we've built something solid and real, I'll ask you properly. But until then, you should have it, because it's always been yours, Sarah. From the moment I bought it, it was only ever meant for you. She hadn't opened the box, didn't need to. She knew what was inside, and knowing was enough. For now, she had her work, her therapy, her slowly healing relationship with Michael, and the understanding that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, being honest, doing the hard work, and choosing each other every day. That was enough. That was everything.
Real love isn't found in perfect moments or flawless people. It's built in the aftermath of mistakes, in the space between hurting and healing, in the courage to be honest even when honesty is terrifying. Mental illness doesn't make someone unworthy of love, but it does require honesty, treatment, and the willingness to do hard work. And loving someone with mental illness doesn't mean fixing them or saving them. It means supporting them while they do their own healing. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're struggling. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is create space for someone else to struggle without trying to fix them. Healing isn't linear, relationships aren't fairy tales, but truth, even painful truth, is always better than comfortable lies. And sometimes starting over is the only way to move forward.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.